Next, we come to the part of the agenda for the public commentary and inquiry. Anyone care to be heard on any other matter at the township? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a few questions concerning,
Your name and address.
Pamela Watson, I reside in 249.
Thank you.
Township. Question on minutes for the township committee meetings,
On what?
on the township committee meetings,
Yes.
your minutes. Can you tell me where I can find the entire year of 2016? It's not in the system. Nor are the minutes for 2018 from January to current. I was just wondering, where can I find those?
On the website, should be on the website.
For the website. Also, I post them on General Code, who is our codifier for our ordinances. I post them since 1932.
Yeah.
If you're interested in going back.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
interested in 2016 and this
Yeah.
year, but.
That should be
on the
online.
system.
Are you talking about the minutes for this body?
Yes.
Yes. This body. Yeah, just this body.
That's it.
I will confirm that they should be,
Because I couldn't find it.
and there is an archive button, I'm not sure if 16 is archived or not on the website.
Is there a way I can get into the archive?
Yeah, and you can click on it, just to bring you back to previous years, so it gives you the current years plus a couple years back, and then you can go into the archive version, which basically goes back all the way to the early 2000s.
Okay.
But you can always email me at CEmilio,
Can you say C?
CEmilio, AMELIO, @morristwip.com, and I'd be happy to guide you through it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, my real questions.
Young lady back there, did you have something?
I'm not finished.
She's not finished.
Oh, sorry.
I understand that the township has approved $12,000 to hire an engineering firm concerning the Collinsville playground?
That is correct.
Correct? Is this $12,000 coming from the remaining balance that we have for the playground?
It is not.
It is. Okay. What are the engineering firm, what are they going to do?
K&K is going to do locations for all of the equipment and where it's going to be placed, and then an entire for the entire park, showing where all the facilities are within the park.
Okay, and they're going to do that work?
They were given the contract, it was awarded by the Township Committee last meeting, they've already begun the work on it.
Okay. Do you have a completion date of that?
I do not have one here with me, I can certainly get that for you.
On this coming Monday, June the 24th, the township summer programs begin, and Collinsville Playground will be staffed with 2 people for 2 hours. What are they going to be doing?
I can certainly have our recreation supervisor reach out for you and discuss that with
Okay, I
you.
was wondering what they had planned and what activities were scheduled, being that there is absolutely nothing in the playground.
I'm sure they have basketball and some other things that they may be using, but I will certainly have to reach out for you. We don't have that level of
Good.
detail here.
Speaking of basketball, I understand that, and I've noticed that is it the AAU basketball team, they have been practicing a couple of nights and on Saturday at the Collinsville playground, and we're excited to see some activity going on in that playground. However, neighbors have noticed that the restrooms there are locked. And so some of the young players there found urinating on the side of the building where the restroom is.
Please call the police.
That's what I would tell them to do. So is there a way that we can open up the restroom for the fellas that are playing there and practicing? When you're opening up the playground for practice, is there a way that the facilities can be open for them when you're there?
If they're willing to hire somebody to monitor them.
Who is they? The basketball team?
Yes, ma'am.
AAU would have to hire someone,
That is correct.
and you would give them the key to access for that?
No, we are hired, they would have to hire one of our employees and pay for that.
Oh, you would have to hire like one of the staff. Is there, what would be the cost for that?
Probably about $15 an hour.
And then I guess we need to reach out to the AAU in reference to that. Okay. That answers some questions.
And if you give me your email address, I'll send you the link to the minutes.
Mr. O'Reilly, just hold on a second.
Oh,
Young lady, do you want to speak?
yeah, I can speak. It doesn't matter who goes first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, the last, Jim O'Reilly, 1594, last meeting, there was a disturbance, a young man made a disturbance, and the police escorted him out. Do you have any information on the resolution of that case?
Mr. Mills?
The matter is currently in part of a police investigation and part of a prosecution, I would imagine, so the law requires us to remain without comment on that, Mr. O'Reilly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Joan McKenna. I reside at 4424 Piedmont Court. I have a child in 8th grade at Freedom Heights Middle School. I'm here tonight to alert community members, especially parents of school-aged children, to a very important policy recently enacted in the Morris School District. I'm sharing my experience on how this has impacted my family and how it can impact other families as well. This is policy 5601, school clearance following crisis situations. On April 5th, when my situation began, no such policy existed. It was presented at the April 30th and May 7th Board of Education meetings. There was no formal email notification inviting parents attend to give their input on this important new policy. What is school clearance? It's a risk assessment by a licensed clinician to determine a student does not present a danger to himself or others and is cleared to return to school. With random internet postings, perceived threats, and school shootings, schools are enacting policies to deal with the issue. Good intent, but the policy actually has to be effective and protect all parents and children's rights. According to mass shooting investigations, it's not exactly a lack of mental health treatment or clearance that stood in the way of prevention. The fact is, clearance letters don't do much, as they are completely subjective. One only has to look at the Henderson Behavioral Health Center clearance given to the accused Florida Parkland shooter. Morris District has created a policy without much public input or facts to support a valid approach. One has to ask, is this policy legal? Surely, most parents would not approve this policy as currently written. Risk assessments have gotten so necessary that St. Clair's Behavioral Health Center has contracts with 85 schools in the state of New Jersey to provide a clearance letter. Within 24 to 48 hours of an incident, a social worker under psychiatrist may assess a student for suicidal ideations, perceived threat, or a cover our butts clearance. Your HIPAA rights are totally protected. However, Morris District may choose another option, and this is important. School officials determine whether the student presents as a potential danger and requires a mental health assessment prior to reinstatement. They remove the child from school, and you're stuck with their decision, whether rational or not. They take total authority, and rather than only mandate clearance on their informed consent, they can mandate you take your child to only their board-approved psychiatrist at district pay for a full psychiatric evaluation, forcing you to surrender your child's private mental health information, normally protected by HIPAA, superseding our parental rights to make decisions for our own children's health care. While their policy states you have several clinician options, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker, or a psychiatric nurse practitioner, the principal and others ultimately have total power over that option, according to Section 4B on their policy. It says as determined by the district. To my knowledge, they only have 4 board-approved psychiatrists and no other types of board-approved clinicians. So even their policy is invalid. I don't know how this government entity has any business in determining medical evaluations for our children. What's significantly missing from this policy is their informed consent. We all know, once you sign on the dotted line, all bets are off. If you don't have all the information you want on that consent form, your life could be turned upside down.
I know you've got your momentum going, and I don't mean to disturb it, but you recognize that this is not a Board of Education.
I do, but this is a
So,
community matter.
to what end would you think we could grant a result of any kind? Or are you just looking for a forum to make the announcement, which is perfectly okay?
I am, I just wanted to alert community members, it affects parents in the district. Yeah, oh yeah, I know you can't make a resolution, absolutely.
Please be mindful of the time constraints.
Thank you, I am. Morris informed consent is a broad, open-ended consent, which doesn't include the word parents. There's no state law permitting school districts to keep a child from their pre-public school education pending a full psychiatric evaluation. New Jersey Statute Title 18A, education, works against that action. It may possibly be required for forensic matters, however. How do I know this? As I said, our issue began April 5th. My child committed no crime and was given clearance by the ultimate authority for towns, which is law enforcement. Yet the school has forced me into a legal situation and won't allow my child back into school, even though as a courtesy without policy, we obtained a clearance letter from St. Clair's. My child has missed a third of this school year, and I don't know when this political agenda of the school officials will end. I'm a single mom, not in a position to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney, nor should I have to. I come here freely tonight to warn other parents of this new policy and challenge the board to explain it to the community with facts to support its effectiveness and reliability. I'm not particularly pleased with how the district is spending our hard-earned tax dollars in this matter. I'd be happy to provide the board with details of my child's case and look forward to settling the matter with them to avoid further damage to my child's right to a free public education. My sincere thanks to ablechild.org for their diligent charitable work on behalf of parents. Thank you so much for your attention.
Ms. McKenna, have you presented this to the school board?
They know everything that's going on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Would you like it? I do have some handouts if you'd like them. It's up to you.
I would say this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We go over 10 Arrowhead Road. I have a question on a couple of the resolutions. 131-18, the trail improvements to Jockey Hollow. The bids, I guess, came in all over bid. What was the improvement or work that was being sought to be done there?
We were putting in handicapped accessible trails in there as part of the Morris County Grant Program.
And so because of the bids came in, is that project now sort of frozen or on hold? Is there any work looking at the scouting organizations or nonprofits or any other way to get that accomplished rather than?
If you'd like to write me a check for about $75,000 or $85,000, we could do the project, but basically it's dead.
So, okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. 132 dash, Township Committee to enter into the, 132 dash 15 maybe? 18, I'm sorry, 18. The services that will be entered into with the James Street Condo Association, what kind of municipal services are we talking about? What is that referencing? What's that?
As we give to every town community, what they did get, it's partially for their street lighting, fire hydrants, and snow plowing.
Is that something they were doing previously themselves and now it's coming over to the township?
No, it's a new development.
Oh, it's a brand, that whole development is brand new. Thank you. My agenda only goes up to 141-18. I have a draft agenda, I guess, from the web that I printed yesterday. There were three others, 142. I thought I heard Mr. Mancuso say it goes up to 144.
Yeah, we did 142, 18, 43, and 44, 18.
And could you just give me just a brief summary of what each, well, I don't have the content in front of me, what those actually are. Usually Mr. Mills does a great job of saying things that have been added recently. I don't know, maybe they were added a few days ago, but you could just elaborate. I don't have that content in
It's
front of
the
me.
final change order and finalizing the contract for improvements to the sewer plant and then also for the purchase of 2 new vehicles.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of quick questions on some things that are going on over on my side of town by Columbian Park. Mr. Mancuso, Mr. Mayor, do you have any update on the flyover there and speaking with other towns in the county, any progress being made there? Where do you see that standing right
I
now?
have heard nothing new. I'm trying to get in touch with the DOT again to try to see where we are and what's happening with the county, to see what their particular plans are, but nothing to report there, sir.
Nothing before you. And Mr. Mayor, I know they've done some repaving work over there and restriping of the lanes. I think they got most of it done over the course of one evening,
Yeah.
which is like when I saw them setting up and impacted by it. But I don't know if they've been back. I know they put the graphics on the road, the lines and stripes, but it looks like it's sort of like half done. I mean, they haven't done I would thought the whole intersection was done. Are they coming back, or is that work continuing? Are they finished for now?
I went over and looked at it today, and I know exactly what you're talking about, especially the turn from Columbia Road onto Park Avenue. That wasn't taken care of at all. But do you have any other information on it?
No, we're waiting for a response from the county.
We're waiting for a response from the county as to what they're going to do.
County project.
County project, and whether they're coming back or not to finish the job.
So continue to,
To continue to look at it. Okay, thank you. This came up toward the public, I believe last month the public commentary came, maybe close to 1 in the morning, 12:30 a.m. So I asked a question about the tripartite agreement between Florham Park, the County Golf Club, and Morris Township. It wasn't really quite understood the answer I was given. Maybe you could just clarify for me again. This is a project to repave a portion of a private road that's not even in our town, but we're taking the lead on, we're contributing $8,000, which may seem de minimis amongst these $100,000 line items, but I know for an administration that watches every penny and is cautious with our taxpayer dollars. Why are we taking the lead on this, and why are we spending taxpayer dollars to sort of repave a road that belongs to, I guess, a private golf club, and it's not in our town? Why is it, I mean, it's actually in Florham Park, but it's a private. Why are we taking the lead?
A third of the project's in Morris Township.
A third of, okay,
A third of the project is the golf course, and a third of the project is in Florham Park. And it's important for the residents in your neighborhood to have access over to this side of town, to have that open and not put up a gate there to close down the roadway on the Florham Park section.
when you say a third, and a third, are you talking about the entire stretch of road that runs from the gate all the way up to the golf club, past Minisink?
No, just the mini-sink.
Just to Minisink. So you're saying a third of the road in between the gate and Minisink, it actually resides in Morris Township proper?
That's what our engineers have informed me.
Thank you. We'll look into that. That's not what I've been informed of, but take it on that. So I should follow up with Mr. Slade on it to see if that's actually accurate. Is that correct?
You have the maps.
Is the next. Thank you. Any update on Cordine Field?
Moving along as some, I don't know if you've been up there, but
I have not. That's what I.
They're moving.
go take a look.
Will it be, okay, all right, and so that's anticipated to be ready for the fall use?
Certainly hope so.
Okay. And regarding Cordine Field, I know that the last, maybe 2 meetings ago, gentleman, Mr. Slater, founder of the Wildcats, came and offered, he had manpower, resources, and such to build a press box there and had volunteers to do it, and was seeking approval from the township, or cooperation with the township, to sort of get that going. Any progress made on that, or?
We met with him and told him what he needs to do.
Thank you. And then my last question is, I guess, for Mr. Mills. Mr. Mills, I obtained the audio file of the court hearing from last week with the compliance court hearing that was a big buildup that we needed to be ready for with the special master in front of the judge, and to take the fair share settlement and the amended housing plan for the township to that judge to see if we were compliant. It was definitely an interesting session, and listening to the transcript. I wonder, it seems like this is still an open issue. It wasn't a final hearing, as the judge said, which I know is what sort of the hope was for this body. So can you just give a summary of where you think we are now going forward post that hearing?
Generally speaking, the plan appears to be acceptable to most of the affected property owners, but for the Sisters of Christian Charity and their attorney. So a series of, one meeting anyway has been scheduled to try and iron out some of the areas of disturbance, if you will, and come up with a plan that will be both supportive of affordable housing, supportive of the sisters, and supportive of the residents of Morris Township, particularly those in Liberty Greens.
And the ordinance that was voted on in the past, heading into that meeting, it sounded to me from listening again to the transcripts, like, are we back to where there'll have to be another ordinance, first reading, back to the planning board? Second reading, it looks like it's sort of heading in that direction. So that would perhaps potentially give, another opening for the public to be involved. So for example, the Mount Campbell people who felt they didn't really have any input to it because the Liberty Greens people went first and they had some input, there may be time to come back to this, or is that an inaccurate
Well, I would
representation?
disagree with your characterization of folks not having the ability to have input, but I agree with the first part of your statement that the process would involve most likely an amendment to the ordinance that, insofar as the portion that affects Liberty Greens, not so much, not at all, any of the other affected parcels, and referral back to the planning board, yes, for a consistency review with the master plan, and then public hearing here.
Again, thank you. My last comment is my interpretation from what I heard listening to the transcript was there was another party there who had mentioned that I think 11 potential developers or interested parties came in toward the site. They actually got 4 bids on the project. So obviously there's a lot of developers that seem to be interested in this property. From what I heard, it seemed like the concept plan was going to be put forward by the Sisters of Charity. They were going to show something that where you could get the units out of the plan, the 55 or whatever the number of units was. And then based on what the developers and that concept plan looks like, we would then create an ordinance to fulfill that sort of plan so it could be all said and done and buttoned up. So to me, my read on it was that we're sort of, or kowtowing or letting the developers sort of dictate how we zone rather than another option. Is that inaccurate?
Two things. One, the judge entered an order yesterday requiring the sisters to produce a concept plan by July 13th for us. And number 2, the township is not going to be bullied into doing anything that is detrimental to the interests of all parties involved,
Thank you very much.
or rather detrimental to any of the parties involved, excuse me.
Thank you.
Jim O'Reilly, 50 Independence Way. You just reminded me of something. I was glad to see in the last, with regard to the plan for the Sisters of Charity, the St. Elizabeth property, that there was a requirement for 25% open space within the development. Can they, if there are wetlands or slopes that can't be built on, can they be counted to be the 25% open space, or does the open space have to be only on land that could be built on?
I'm not certain. I'd have to really scrutinize the ordinance, or I'd otherwise defer to our planner. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Count that as the open space and allow maybe other less challenged area for use for development. Possible. I don't have an answer.
Or whether the open space would have to be included only in the area that could build on?
Yes. Those areas that are wetlands and slopes in excess of, I think, 15% are already protected by virtue of those critical areas, portions of the ordinance. So to allow them to constitute open space might or might not be.
It might be double counted.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. John.
Mike Schumer, 16 Powderhorn Drive. In terms of the compliance here that you had, what would have been the, this is sort of a guess, what would have been the effect if the Mount Kimball ordinance and the Sister of Charity ordinance was not passed by this township?
Well, I suppose.
It's a speculation.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we acted in utmost good faith and arrived at adopted ordinances. If we showed up, having had notice of this hearing back in February, we show up in June with nothing or partial completion, the court would have the authority to impose sanctions. I don't know that it would. I mean, if we frivolously just ignored the court order, perhaps so, but who knows? It's speculation.
Sure. But those ordinances and their approval were a significant part of ensuring that Morris Township was indeed complying with the fair share housing
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
All right, so my question goes to the voting behavior of Ms. Wilson and Mr. Arvanites. You both voted against.
I really don't want an interrogation of the
All
members
right,
of the committee.
fine. Then I'll stop.
Okay, thank you.
You got to put it in the newspaper. What was that sort of?
I'd be delighted to, once you stop with your question, I could answer it, because you do intend to ask a multitude of questions in one sentence. The judge was, it was a 30-day notice. We gave 31 days notice. What she was referring to was the fact that the adoption of ordinance 15-18, or whatever the number was, involving the zoning for Liberty Green and Liberty Greens and some of the others occurred within that 30-day time frame. So that I suppose by extension, an interested party would not have had 30 days from the date of the notice to come down here and inspect those ordinances.
Thank you. There was also, last question, there was also an intervener that was mentioned on the transcript that said they I couldn't quite pick it up on the audio from ABS or AHS, or there was an intervener, another party there that seemed to have an interest. Do you know who they were or what they were?
Yeah, there was a counsel for One Quarry Road was present. They're the only official intervener that I'm aware of. There were citizen representatives of Liberty Greens and people who could potentially be impacted by Mount Kemble. Ms. Wilson was there, the mayor was there.
Okay, all right. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else, I'll close the public hearing.